Hello everyone and welcome back to Good Morning Eastvale. My name is Mollie Kortsen and I'm the city's communications officer. And today we are joined by two of my favorite people in the city. My boss, Marc Donohue, he's the city clerk and communications director here, and also Enswins Cordero, who is our community services manager. So thank you guys both so much for being here. I'm so excited. And in the past episodes we've had, I've read some bios for people, but I kind of want to start by having you guys talk a little bit about maybe like your schooling and what you kind of majored in, maybe talk about old cities that you worked for, what you do for the city now, just like a little bit of your background. So we'll start with Marc.
All right. I went to Cal State LA and I got a degree in operations management. I worked initially for the court system for 6 years. So I worked at Los Angeles Superior Court for 4 years. I worked at the United States District Court for 2 years. After that, I dove into cities, and my first city I worked for was city of South Pasadena. I didn't know what a city clerk was back then, but I was a secretary in the city clerk's office. So that was my introduction into the city clerk world. Once I did that for a little bit, I realized that that's the profession I wanted to get into. So I dove into other different cities and got different promotions at different cities. So I worked for the city of Laguna Woods, Rosemead. I went back to South Pasadena for a second time. This is also my second stint in Eastvale. I worked in Eastvale previously for 2 years. I left and I came back. I came back as a city clerk. A few months after that, our public information officer left the city, so there became an opportunity for me to take on a new role. So that's how I became the communications director. Along with those two things, I also oversee community services and the IT contract for the city.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. Enswins, go ahead.
I think few people know about recreation community services when they're getting out of college. But I went to University of California, Riverside, got my degree in philosophy. I was actually in pre-law. That's what I wanted to do, take a part-time job with the city of Chino in the community services field, and fell in love with the career and made a career out of it. So I was there for quite a few years. Thereafter, I went ahead and went to the city of Rancho Cucamonga, where I also helped oversee several community services programs. Prior to that time, I also got my master's in public administration from Cal State Northridge. Thereafter, there came an opportunity to move jobs closer to home in Eastvale, and so I was able to work for the Hoopa Community Services District, in particular Parks and Recreation Department, where I worked for several years, and then transitioned over to actually the city of Eastvale, where I currently, as Community Services Manager, oversee a very small staff where we help put on major events, big community events. We also support other agencies or other community groups with some of their planning for some of their events. We also have developed some new programs in collaboration with Special Olympics, and we're trying to enhance other services that where we can to make sure everyone in Eastvale has opportunities to have fun.
Well, thank you for being here. I want to start by asking about events because events are pretty new to the city. We just started them in 2021, so it's right around the time when you were coming on. And I wasn't here when we did our very first event. It was Eastvale, and I think obviously when you guys were first putting it on, like no one really knew how it was going to do, if it was going to be like no one was going to show up, if it was going to be 1 million people. We didn't really know, but obviously it did so amazing, and we've had so many events since. So can you guys kind of talk about what was like the headspace going into starting the events, and can you also touch on, how did you feel knowing that our very first event did so well?
Sure. Well, one of the first things to state is that Eastvale itself obviously has a special district that also helps put on major events. So we got a lot of experience, at least myself and some of the other city team, of seeing other successful events take place in the city. So we brought some of that energy, of course, and some of the definitely demand for events was there already in Eastvale. So I think that's what council wanted to see more of. And so Eastvale honestly was an understatement in terms of what we thought we were going to get. And the number of people that showed up in the thousands that initial day was a surprise. There is a lot of planning that goes into special events. A lot of the folks that come to a special event for a few hours don't realize that it's months in advance.
Yeah.
Hours and hours and hours of working with some of our partner groups, working with other volunteers, law enforcement, fire department, our public safety team, to make sure that everyone can show up for an event in the thousands, get there, enjoy their time, and then leave safely as well. So definitely it was, I thought, a huge success for our city team, and I think residents truly enjoyed it.
Just to piggyback off that, before we actually started doing major events, I remember the inspiration to get into events was because of COVID. When everything shut down, there was nothing happening in the city. And I know the city council had a desire to provide more services to the city, and we can't control what outside agencies do, but we can control what we want to do. So I know amongst the council there was a desire to bring community events to the city that we could control, that we could put on ourselves. So that's where the inspiration for the first Eastvale came. When that came to the community, that was our first kind of big community event besides our State of the City and our 9/11 event. That was the first community event. And then when that became successful, then the thought of was, let's bring a community services manager on board and really put on big community events. So that was kind of the inspiration behind it all. It was kind of COVID that led to, let's let the city take on this new role of providing community events and bringing people together, and then we can control that and provide that service to the city.
And Enswins, I like that you touched on how people in the community don't really understand how much goes into it, because now it's you and, 2 community services coordinators, but when I first started, it was only you. And I think, right now we're almost half a year out from Eastvale, and we're already, like you said, that you're about to start going to meetings already. It's already planning, and then soon after that will be Miracle on Citrus Street. So it's literally over half a year out. We're talking about these events. When we were planning Eastvale last year, we were talking about International Food Festival. So it's seriously so much that goes into it, but our team is really, really small. So it's a very big, feat that we're doing it.
It's funny, Angela and I joke about this all the time, but, one time we were in a meeting with someone, and they had made this, I don't know if it was a sarcastic comment, but they said, put a couple bouncers out there and 20,000 people are going to show up. That could be far from the truth. The community really doesn't know how much months of planning, coordination with volunteers or the other organizations, with the city staff, what it takes to really put on a major community event, and a successful and safe one at that. So Enswins and his team really do a lot of good work in this community that I think a lot of it goes unrecognized, because when you get there to the event, it's all there and done, and you think, oh, that looks easy to put on. It's not. A lot of coordination goes into it.
I will say that one thing that we've been very blessed to experience here in Eastvale too, is we have a very dynamic range of partners. And what I mean by that is we have this entire army of volunteers that really have made it possible. So truth be told, I've never experienced the number of, the amount of folks that are willing to help put some of these events on. So to the point where we have to really plan accordingly just on the volunteer side, because we have hundreds of volunteers amongst some major groups that are always willing to contribute their time, their effort, whatever resources they can to help put these events on. So without them, I don't think we can do what we do. And so I think it's testament to the unique nature of our community and the fact that we have been blessed with a lot of volunteer groups that really make it possible, even if we have, let's say, a smaller staff team to help see the success that we've enjoyed.
Definitely. And I'd always say a big kudos to the volunteers, because I talked about this in the episode with Marc Orm, but there's been so many times where it's we're cleaning up for an event, it's Sunday night, it's the middle of the night literally, and it's freezing cold, and there's kids that are out there cleaning up. They're such troopers, they show up every time. But also a big kudos to the staff, because our whole staff is really small compared to most cities. It's a fraction of most cities, and I feel our team just kind of jumps in wherever. And at Eastvale, Marc is always in the maze, and I'm Mrs. Claus at the events if people didn't know that. And Marc is an elf, and you're running around too. And so our team always just sort of jumps in wherever they need to be. But I just feel every day when I'm at the events, I'm this is another day of me doing something I never thought I'd be doing. But you just gotta jump in where you need to be.
My favorite part is just being a monster. I don't know how many children in Eastvale I've scared, but I'm sure there's quite a few. But
yeah,
I love doing it.
If you guys were scared in the maze from the chainsaw guy, that was Marc. So,
that's one of the best things I think we've been able to bring to Eastvale. Something that other people have been in haunted houses before, but to see that kind of amenity at an event, but then also realize, like you said, that the characters are really folks that people will know in the community.
Yeah.
I still recall our finance director playing the piano and trying to scare people. We have our planning manager out there also
chopping
people,
heads.
or deputy city clerks out there, and so it really is kind of this really organic type of amenity that we offer from the folks that make the City of Eastvale team.
Yeah.
So it's really, really cool, and most people may not realize that, but the folks that do, it's quite interesting.
It's not actors. the city team that serves you during
Yes.
business hours is
Yes.
the team that's scaring you at
Yes.
Eastvale.
Well, I remember this year at Miracle when I was Big Mrs. Claus, and there was like this group of teenagers that had come through in like one of the trains, and they were like, "Weren't you that girl that was like leading the haunted tours?" And I was like, "No," but you know, obviously it was me. But I also remember when we were taking the council members through the maze, and former council member Brendan Plott, he was like so scared, and
I
he's
got
like
him a
this
couple
big
times.
guy, and like he was so scared by Mark, and he was just like chasing around with a chainsaw. So I don't know, it was just funny, but. To kind of like talk a little bit more about the events, now we're having, you know, like 10,000, 15,000, like almost 20,000 people show up to the events. And I feel like it's become sort of like a stable piece of our community, where just a few years ago it wasn't something big at all. And now I feel like we're really known for the events. We have people come from all over California. I feel like I'll always ask people like, "Oh, are you from close?" And they'll be like, "Oh, I came all the way from NorCal." So how do you guys feel knowing that, you know, something that we were just kind of like trying out a few years ago has become such a staple piece of the community?
Well, honestly, I think a lot of that also comes from, I think, the support we've received, you know, starting at the top too. I think it's been part of the council's vision to, hey, go big. I remember some of the planning meetings that we had, the parks ad hoc committee meetings, where we had, you know, council members say, you know what, we want to go with this. We fully support you. We believe in what you guys are doing. Let's make it happen. And so I think with that, I mean, you just cannot stop, you know, thinking about what's the next cool thing we can do. And I think that kind of feeds into the event that and people end up experiencing, because we always try. I mean, sometimes we fail. Like any city, any other department that puts on events, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, you learn. But we're always trying to come up with something new and innovative that people will come and enjoy. And so I think part of that extends to the numbers that we've seen, where people are, oh, what? Now we're known for the haunted house, and we have the North Pole trip. So those are some of the things that I think have been very a big part of the success we've had in the numbers that we've seen as well.
And I think it's really great that it's not just a local event, it's a regional event, and the fact that we can bring other people out, because we offer all these different amenities, and you know, we don't charge residents to come to use those things. So I think that's the best part of it, is that the community feels welcome, they feel safe, and they know they're going to be entertained and have a lot of food options. So that's the best part.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like Mark and I, like, we can attest that every single event, you're always like, okay, but what if we do this thing and this thing? It's like you're always pushing it one step further, and you're always saying new ideas. And I'm thinking, like, there's no way we can, like,
Top
pull
that.
like, top this event or pull this, you know, thing off, or, you know, push those boundaries. But I feel like we always do. And there's always people who come and they're like, this is the coolest event I've ever been to, or, you know, this is something that's so different I've never seen. And to do it for free, I feel like, I mean, not us for free, but for the residents to be able to come for free is just such an awesome thing. And I feel like that's what has made our tiny city, like, sort of on the map all of a sudden. I think people are really starting to, like, know who Eastvale is because of the events. So it's been very awesome. But the next thing I want to jump into, unless you had something else to add.
No.
Okay,
That
okay.
was great. No,
You were like-
can't top that. No, that was good. That was good.
So, okay, I want to jump over back to Mark, and you might get mad at me for this, but obviously we are all in the city clerk / communications department, but I'm on the communication side. I feel like even me, sometimes I'm like, what do the city clerks do? I don't particularly know, because I'm not on that side, you know? And I sit right next to our deputy city clerk every single day. I don't know what she's doing. I know she's working, but I don't know what she's working on. So can you just talk a little bit about the day-to-day of, like, what does the clerk's office do? Like, what are you doing in the daily? Just walk us through.
Yeah, and that's a common thing I hear all the time about what does the clerk do. And it's funny because a lot of our stuff is mundane and routine, so it's not exciting stuff. So this is not gonna make you jump or anything. But our main thing is that we do elections. So if you want to run for city council, if there's a ballot measure on an election that runs through our department. So every 2 years when we have a general municipal election, if you want to run for city council, you'll come see the city clerk's office. You'll pull paperwork with us. We'll process your paperwork. If you qualify, we'll make sure that your name is on the ballot. So, but that's only every 2 years. So we don't do that all the time, every day. Our day-to-day stuff is public records requests. So if you need a record from the city, you'll come through the city clerk's office. We offer passport services. So if you need a passport, Eastvale is a city that does do passport services on site. We also try to do passport days quarterly. So those are always fun for the community. We also do a Fair Political Practices Commission forms. So if you are on the city council or city staff, you might have to file a Form 700. Or if you have a political campaign, like some of our council members, they have a a campaign where they take in funds, where they spend money, they'll file their forms with the city clerk's office. So that's kind of like a gist of some of the stuff that we do. Of course, city council meeting agendas. We produce all the agendas for the city. Commissions, planning commission, public safety commission, city council. We do all the agendas. We run those meetings. So the clerk at the meeting, calling the votes, doing the roll call. That's the city clerk's office doing that. So it's kind of a gist of what we do day to day. There's a lot of other stuff in between that. Contracts, insurances, verification, stuff like that. But that's kind of the gist of what the city clerk's office does day to day. It's nothing exciting, but they're all essential things that needs to be done to make sure that the city's running.
So when I was at my first city, when I was interning in college, my director was like, okay, well, what do you want to do long-term in government? And I was like, I don't really know. I didn't know a lot. But it was during an election season, and I saw the city clerk. They were like running the elections, and I was like, I think I want to be a city clerk. That's what I said. And I was like, that just seems so fun. They were working on the elections. And then when the election ended and they were like doing the day-to-day, I was like, I don't want to be a city clerk. That's not my calling. But at first, like the election stuff seemed so fun to me.
Right.
Because I was a political science major. So I was like, oh, that's so fun. And then when the election was over, I was like, maybe that's not my calling.
I will tell you, being in the profession for as long as I have, and being involved in my association, no one dreams to become a city clerk. No one thinks when they're 20 or going to college, I'm going to be a city clerk. You kind of just fall into it. I fell into it myself. I started working for a city, and I ended up in the clerk's office, and that's how I got introduced to it. So it's a unique profession. It's very much needed in our local government, but not a lot of people understand what it is. But that makes sense.
Well, something I was talking to, I don't remember who I was talking with, but someone at the city of, at cities, people, there will be like different departments depending on the city. Like some people have full economic development departments, or sometimes it's like grouped with things, or same thing with public works. And it's like things will be grouped, but every city has a city clerk, so like office and department. There's no exceptions around that. It's like the one that's like an absolute constant.
And fun fact, it's actually in the government code that every city is required to have a city clerk.
Well, there you go. Look at me learning things about my own department. Okay, so one of my last questions, we have a lot going on in our department always because we're clerk and communications and community services. What are some fun things that we have coming up that the community can look forward to in our department?
Well, I can probably head that off in terms of events and community services. We are expanding services for programs, recreational programs, for other demographics. So in regarding to at-risk youth services, seniors as well. At Special Olympics, we're looking to expand that. We're actually seeking to host some of their regional games. So there'll be more information coming out about that. And we're also obviously in the midst of planning for Eastvale. And again, everyone's favorite, Miracle on Citrus as well. So besides the large community events, we do have some other kind of secrets to be that will be made public soon in terms of other things that the community will definitely enjoy and will be proud of.
We need to dust off our Santa costumes because it's right around the corner.
I'm always willing to serve as elf or monster,
or the
depending on the
chainsaw
event.
guy.
Or chainsaw guy.
Okay.
Real chainsaw, but with no chain.
Yeah, don't worry. Everyone.
But real noise.
Real scares.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else?
That's the fun stuff I think happening in our department. Like I said, in city clerk stuff, there's not a ton of exciting things going on. It's a lot of mundane day-to-day tasks that are needed, but they're not exciting. Communications, we're always rolling. We're doing these podcasts now. We're doing our social media is booming, but a lot of that are day-to-day tasks too. But we enjoy making those announcements to the community. We just, whenever there's an economic development update in the city, we always get huge feedback. So we always look forward to those kind of things. IT-wise, that's just as boring as city clerk stuff. I'm not going to pretend that it's exciting, but those are things that we need to be done at the city. Like IT needs to work so we can function as a staff and serve the community. So they're not all as exciting. I would say Enswins' role gets the community going. It's the part that I think council gets excited about. That's a way for them to be forward-facing with the community, to have that in-person interaction with the community. So it's very much needed and essential. The rest of it is needed too. It's just not as exciting, but we're always busy.
I feel like I always need to shout out IT because one, we're never probably going to have them on the podcast, but I feel like you know this, that every single day I break my computer or my phone, or like, I don't know, every single day I have to go to the IT people and be like, you guys, I broke this again. And they're like, there's no way you broke your email. And I'm like, no, I did.
You want to hear something funny? As I was leaving City Hall to come to this today, they were in your area working on something on your desk.
Yeah, because I break stuff every day. I don't know how. I just will come in and it's broken. And I think I have like a curse.
They're used to it.
They're so nice. I know. And every time I go over to them, they're like, what do you need, Mollie? Like, they already know that I'm over there because I broke something. So my final question I want to ask is something I've asked every single person who's been on the podcast, and it's really the driving force of the podcast. It's just to give a behind-the-scenes, like, day-to-day look at what all of us are doing here in the city. It also is like an opportunity for you guys to talk about maybe like some misconceptions that we might have. So is there anything that you guys feel that you really want to address? Any like behind-the-scenes things that you want to bring to the light? This is your chance to sort of, be on the stage.
Yeah. Well, in terms of events or community services, I think I've already hinted at it before, but one of the biggest things is you spend so much time, resources, hours, months, days, weeks, planning for something that's only a few hours long. And I think the behind the scenes, what people may not realize sometimes, it's that, most folks that help and spend a lot of time or have a lot of passion for what they do, they definitely, sometimes are also emotionally invested in these projects and these things, just like many other people do. And I think in Eastvale, in our community events and what we've been able to put on, we've put a lot of emphasis on public safety. And that public safety aspect of it in regards to something that may be as subtle as, we're going to have metal detection stands, or we're going to make sure that the perimeter is completely closed off. And all these little meetings that we have with, as I mentioned before, but with our first responders and the support from the Sheriff's Department, Fire Department, there is a lot of planning, an extensive amount of planning that happens to make sure that everyone that goes to an event or attends anything from the city is safe, feels safe, and leaves safely as well. Because that's really the badge that we are most proud of, is that we're going to get the complaints about, oh, I didn't like this food truck, or I didn't like this food vendor, or the music, that band, this. I mean, we get those things, and we understand everyone has different tastes. Everyone might have even slightly different experience. But if that person was able to go ahead and arrive, come to our event, and then go home safely, and then we're okay with that. Because I think at the end of the day, that's really what we want to do, is making sure that people and their families as well feel safe. And that's kind of the best compliment we received, and that's something we're very proud of, that sometimes we don't get to express. But it's definitely a compliment to see so many families, see so many kids, come out and get back home safely. So
I agree. Safety, number one priority. Anything?
I would say my day-to-day is kind of different from your guys's. So like at a director level, I'm in a lot of meetings. I'm often dealing with the politics of, government. I'm really lucky to have terrific staff, both of you and all the 8 of us. I think there's 8 of us, 9 of us?
I think 9 of us.
There's 9 of us now. Are all terrific. They all do their job really well. Mollie runs the day-to-day of the communications. Enswins runs the day-to-day of community services. Jessica runs the day-to-day of city clerk's office. So I'm really lucky to have all of you on staff to help me get through those things, because sometimes I'm stuck in meetings all day or dealing with other stuff, and I can't get to those little things. So that's kind of the gist of my day-to-day, is just dealing with fires and putting out fires and being a support for you guys, because you're a support for me.
Well,
Good thing that's being recorded.
Yeah.
I know, I'm like, let's play that back. No, well, thank you guys so much for being on the podcast. It's been so fun. And this was, I feel like we were all so well behaved, but I feel we all kind of, we have our banter.
And I could have bantered a little bit more.
The boys, they are like always in our staff meetings.
It's the tie. It's a tie that kind of makes you change. If the tie was off or a little bit looser.
I woke up today and chose peace.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
That's what it was.
No, I was scared. I was like,
That's
maybe
what
there'll
it
be a
was.
fist fight on the camera. We'll see.
Oh,
who knows?
There's still time.
Yeah.
That's true. We still have like a few more minutes. Okay, so the real last thing I want to do is like a rapid fire, get to know you, fun questionnaire. Okay. So just you got to say the first thing that comes to your brain. Don't think about it.
Oh, geez.
So we'll start with Marc and then go to Enswins. Okay. So
Good.
first thing that comes to your brain. They're easy. So don't be scared. Okay. Chick-fil-A or In-N-Out?
In-N-Out.
Oh, In-N-Out.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
next. Oh,
That's
got
easy.
it. I got it.
Okay. I know what you guys were gonna say. Okay. Eastvale or Miracle?
Eastvale.
Miracle.
Really?
I like to scare people.
Eastvale. Yeah.
It's the music, the holiday music.
I love both, but
true.
slightly Eastvale.
Yeah.
I don't know which one I like more. I think Miracle because I like being Mrs.
The
Claus.
North Pole trip.
Yeah.
I mean, seeing those trains and seeing that, that's hard to beat.
Seeing the tears and frighten people's faces.
I feel like I've never gotten to experience Miracle though because I'm always down being Mrs. Claus.
That's what
so
it is.
I've done it twice, and so I've never really gone to Miracle. I feel like so, but I do like it. Okay, next thing. Would you rather sit in the Costco gas line on a Sunday or sit in the Dutch Bros coffee line?
Costco gas line.
I do the Costco because the Dutch roller ones, I can avoid it because I know when it's like slow, so that won't happen.
Oh, okay, so you know the city. Okay, I already know your answer. Would you rather take a walk in the August heat or the January winds?
This is January wins.
January wins.
Me and Mark are the biggest heat haters ever. Actually, you too. I feel
Yeah,
like all
me
three of
too.
us are the biggest heat
It's a little
haters.
warm in this room right now.
No, it is. Every time it's over 60 degrees, I'm like,
We're dying.
Mark
Right.
takes any chance to show off his Canada Goose jacket, so
Yeah.
that's what we'll do.
That's true.
It's essential.
okay. Next, favorite place to eat in Eastvale?
Oh, gosh. It's going to be Heroes now.
I like Crying Tiger.
Oh my gosh, me too. I think that's my favorite. Okay, your favorite thing about the city?
Just how I think how it's like it's a growing city, but it's also a tight-knit community where everyone knows. I feel like everyone. I don't know if that's just my perception of it, but I feel like it's such a close-knit community, yet we're growing and growing and growing, but we still maintain that kind of small-town feel, which I really value for me and my family.
Mine, probably easily at this point in my life, are all the opportunities for children, in particular my kids, to enjoy sports, to enjoy different kind. I think what we have here in Eastvale is just amazing. So I'm really, really enjoying that.
That's sweet. Okay, very last question. Your favorite interaction or memory while working for the city?
I always enjoy when election time is done. I always enjoy administering the oath of office to our incoming council members. I think it's something special, something that's near and dear to their heart, and I always enjoy. That's one of probably the favorite things I get to do as a city clerk is oath in our incoming city council. So that's always fun for me.
Gosh, there's so many to narrow one.
Better say me.
You know what? Well, you're a part of it, and it was probably the inaugural North Pole trip ride when we had the donation, and shout out to PetSmart for their wonderful donation of stuffed animals, and and to seeing the kids' faces that first time with all the planning, we weren't sure if it was going to work, whether the trains would even be able to make it back or something, and for it to work well, and seeing the kids kind of like be transported to North Pole and have them snowed on, and just the faces when they were getting off the train, knowing they had seen all the elves and the deer, the live reindeer that we had. I don't think that'll be tough to beat. Hasn't been beaten yet. I think that's the best so far.
I think you can do it. If anyone can do it, it's
Yeah.
you. I'm excited
try.
for what we do this year.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right. Well, thank you both so much for being on the podcast. I think that concludes everything, but I hope you guys will continue to tune in, and we'll see you next time.
Take care.